Hello?
What's up, man?
What's up, man? What do you want to talk about?
So, all right. Um, I look at your thing. I've seen you on here before. So you say I'm a leftist. Let's debate. One thing that I love is that all the stuff on there that you put,
Yeah.
I'd say almost all of them, most people could agree with. Those aren't leftist facts. You know what I
I
mean?
mean, I
Like,
come to them from a leftist viewpoint. I don't think, obviously, I want everybody to agree with them. I don't care if you identify as a leftist, but that's just more saying where I'm coming from, how I come to these positions.
yeah. So, like, I think right now we're the biggest debate between leftists and people that are center right, or alt right comes with free speech. Would you agree?
I don't think so. No, I think that there are, like, what exactly do you mean when you say comes with free speech? When that's like, do you
Okay,
think
I
that's the
think the
most
biggest
pressing issue,
debate.
like facing the world? Or are you saying just the country? Or,
No, I think that like the thing about like leftists, like I think that the biggest thing that they debate is about free speech. Like saying, okay, Medicare for all, debatable. Okay, end the wars. That's a very ambiguous thing. Okay, most people left and right will say, yeah, we don't want to get any stupid wars. So end all wars. If you're speaking in absolute, is a pretty not a very intelligent statement.
I think
Pro
that I would
immigration,
just well,
most.
I want to push back on that. I
Yeah.
disagree that saying ending all the wars is an unintelligent thing. I would strongly push back on that. I think that that's without question something that we should strive for as a world, ending the wars.
Okay. But you're saying strive for. We all know it's impossible to end all wars. Like
At the
that's a
very least,
total
I think
unrealistic thing.
we can end the ones that we're starting. Can we agree on that? That that's a very doable thing.
Yeah, I'd say the wars that we've had as up to now, I think left and right would agree. They've been dumb wars. You know, I shouldn't say dumb, but they've been wars that should come to an end. Then you can I go point for point?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Sick. Also, I love that you're willing to have these conversations. This is awesome. Um, Tax the rich. Okay, I think most people would agree that we need to tax the rich. I think most people would agree. I think where the issue comes in there, and this is a pretty cliche thing, it's the tax codes that need to change. You know what I mean? Like we're not fighting the real enemy. The real enemy is the tax codes. We need to rewrite how the tax language is written so then people can get taxed fairly.
I
Because
don't
when
disagree that
the
we
enemy
do
when
need.
the enemy is the person getting taxed or who should be getting taxed, you're fighting the wrong battle. The battle should be, hey, why don't we have legislature that people are writing that will get the right people to be taxed? Does that make like do you agree on that?
I don't disagree that we need a massive overhaul of the way that taxes are done because there are so many loopholes that allow billionaires to get away with paying very little in taxes. But I think a big part of that overhaul is making sure that the rich are actually paying taxes because right now we saw, I think it was in 2019, we saw the study that the top 100 wealthiest families, I believe, they pay a lower effective tax rate than the average American. I think that that's what I mean personally when I say tax the rich. I mean fixing the
Yeah.
tax code so that that's not a thing anymore.
Yeah, and but like, and I see people in your, like I'm not like backing like yeah, rich people absolutely should be taxed. They 100% should, but it's finding the wrong. Like we have to ask, okay, why aren't they being taxed? We're asking the wrong question. It's who isn't being taxed. That's what people want to know. That's we got to ask why aren't they being taxed. When we ask why they're not being taxed, then we can get to the root cause of things. Next point, Trump was a disaster. Okay, I think most people would agree, like this isn't just a leftist thing. Most people would agree Trump made a lot of mistakes. Disaster, debatable if you want to say he was a disaster. The
I mean,
way things ended,
I want to push back on mistakes. I think a lot of the things that he did that were wrong, he did very intentionally. I
such
would.
as what? Such as what?
So for example, he vetoed. It was a bipartisan resolution passed by Congress. So Congress passed a resolution to end our support of the Saudi-led genocide in Yemen. Congress passed this. Trump vetoed that and then increased arms sales to Saudi Arabia as they're engaging in these atrocities, they're killing tens of thousands of people in Yemen. That was not an accident. That was not a mistake. He intentionally did that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one example of things that he did. Would I say that his entire presidency was a disaster? I wouldn't say so. I think there were good that was in there. I think are really people that don't think that there was good that was in there aren't looking at things objectively. There was a
I,
lot of bad. Don't
I
get me
think
wrong. And,
the
and, and I'm not a Trump guy. I am not a Trump guy. But there were some things that were going on that were beneficial. And this is another cliche thing to say, but it's true. Okay, the stock market was through the roof.
Oh,
Okay,
that's a very bad metric of how the economy is doing for the average person, though. I think that there's a new report that came out recently. The top 10% of wealthiest Americans, they own 89% of all stocks. So
okay.
overwhelmingly, when we see how the stock market's doing, we're seeing how the wealthy are doing. You know what I mean?
I think that's debatable. I think that's debatable. Well, I mean, yes, I'd say ultimately people who own stocks obviously have more dispensable income. They've got income to spend. So you're going to look at people that are higher up in the wealth hierarchy.
Sure.
But if you look at people who are poor, okay, people who are poor, there were more jobs that were created under the Trump administration than there were the Obama administration. And I'm
But
not a
let's
Trump.
get into this. Are they good jobs? Or are we seeing an expansion of the gig economy where people are having unfulfilling jobs where they don't have the benefits they would like, they don't have things like paid time off, they don't have good health care? Like what kind of jobs are we seeing created? Are we seeing stable jobs that people can hopefully support their family on if they want to, or are we seeing this continuous, more and more people becoming independent contractors where they don't have the benefits that we would like to see? We see Uber really take advantage of this a lot. So I think that that's really important to kind of get to when we're talking about the economy.
So you're saying, are we seeing that these jobs that were added, were they jobs that were beneficial to who were getting them? Like, were they the high end jobs that everybody wants? Was that what you're
Not
saying?
even just high end jobs. I think that we can definitely, I'm not saying like, oh, are all these jobs, paying, six figure salaries. I don't think that that's necessarily what I'm saying, but I do think that we're seeing an expansion of this. And these are trends that started under Obama. Don't get me wrong. I think that all of my critiques, they're not just, oh, Trump wasn't some uniquely bad figure. I think that he was worse in a lot of ways than the people that came before him. But I also think that he was potentially just a continuation in other areas. So I don't think that like a lot of the negative trends that we saw in the economy, they didn't start under Trump, but he didn't help them in my opinion.
Like you're saying, the negative trends that we're seeing now.
I mean, negative trends that we're also seeing today. Yeah, I don't think that Biden is a huge break from this either.
No, so let's go to the next point. Biden is terrible, but an improvement. Okay, an improvement. How so? Are we saying? And I think the thing that thing that Biden is better at is he doesn't say as much dumb stuff in terms
No,
of
no, it's
shooting
not.
his mouth off.
It's not
He
about
says
it's
dumb
not
things
about
all the
rhetoric at
time
all.
that don't make
It's
any
all about
sense.
policy. It's all about policy. It's not about the rhetoric. The rhetoric, because people can say
I,
things. Trump said that he was going to get us out of Afghanistan for 4 years. He never did it. I think that rhetoric
Biden
means
said he was going to get a bunch of money for student loans. Never got
no,
it.
no, and that's my
Done
point.
nothing there.
Rhetoric means
There's
very
been
little.
no good legislation and
Politicians
policy that's
lie
been
all.
passed by Obama or by Biden. There's
So
been none.
politicians lie. Not. I would definitely push back on that, and we can get into some of the specifics. But
Okay.
I'm saying when my critiques of Trump are all policy oriented. Sure, yeah, I think he said horrible things too. But like I think the more relevant thing are the policies that they actually implemented, what they actually did.
Okay. I think if you're speaking just policy, I think you could argue that Trump is significantly better policy wise than Biden is. I mean, I think
I would love to hear a couple examples of that. Let's look at
as to why
foreign policy. I would love to hear a couple examples. Because
about
foreign
foreign
policy is
policy.
where the president has the most direct, I guess, control. You know what I mean? Because a lot of domestic stuff has to come through Congress. Because I could just off the top of my head, to go back to the example I said before with Saudi Arabia and Yemen, Biden ended all support for the offensive portion of what Saudi Arabia is doing in Yemen. Now this is woefully inefficient because a lot of the stuff they're doing is labeled as defensive. So he's really not cutting off that much. But still, at the very least, saying we're no longer going to support the offensive atrocities you guys are doing, that's an improvement. It's a small improvement. I still think it's terrible, but it's there.
Yeah.
There are things
Yeah,
like getting back into the Iran deal. That wouldn't have happened under Trump. Trump pulled us out of it. Trump was escalating tensions with Iran. Now, Biden hasn't gotten us back into it yet, but I think there's a good chance that he will, hopefully at least. So I think that there are some pretty
Now,
clear
are you saying
distinctions that we
the,
can.
the Iran nuclear deal?
Yes.
Okay, so why would we want to go back into the Iranian nuclear deal when
So
we
by
get
all
no benefit
accounts,
from it?
oh well, I mean this is not true at all. And also I think it's about looking at other countries too. We're looking at a country that we've been incredibly aggressive towards over the last several decades. I think that this is a country that we can go back to 53. We waged a coup against, we helped with the help of the British, a coup against their democratically elected leader. We backed a dictator in their country for a couple decades. They overthrew said dictator, and we've been in pretty open hostilities towards them ever since. And I think the Iran deal was a very small step towards hopefully creating better relationships with that country. And Trump pulled us out of it. He increased sanctions. He assassinated one of their top military and political figures. And it almost brought us to the brink of war with Iran. I think it was a disaster.
So you're talking about creating a vacuum, which is exactly what happened in Afghanistan, which is exactly what happened when Biden's going to pull out and create a vacuum and leave when all of his advisors said don't do it at the rate.
Wait, I'm sorry. I gotta. That's a really big That's not what I said at all. That's like I
well,
do
you
think that
described
when
the vacuum. You described the vacuum. When we go into somewhere, have a coup, then we leave, and then somebody else takes over after we leave.
No.
Right?
So in 53 with Mossadegh, that was the leader, the democratically elected leader that we backed the coup against in Iran. We did not leave a vacuum. We backed the dictator that followed the Shah. The Shah was a very brutal, tyrannical dictator that was over the country for, like I said, a couple decades. Then in 79 there was the revolution, and now that's when the Ayatollah has been in power since then. That was not a good thing. That was not a vacuum. We backed a dictator in place of the coup that took place. And then because they overthrew said dictator that we were backing, we have been in opposition to them since then. Now, when you can talk about Iraq, like when we took out Saddam, that definitely created a vacuum. That's what ISIS formed out of that vacuum. We could definitely talk about vacuums created, but that's not really the case with Iran.
Okay, well, with Iran, we're not talking about Iran. We're talking about you're talking about the Iranian deal, and then you're talking about Yemen, and I'm talking about Afghanistan. Okay, so there's three different things here.
Well, we were talking about Iran though, and you said, "Oh, it created a vacuum." That's
you're talking
not
about you're talking about the Iranian deal. Then you were talking about Yemen.
So pulling out of the Iran deal, yes, I think that was a bad move.
Yeah. Okay. You think pulling? Okay, so you think getting back into it is the right move to go?
Yes.
Okay. Why do you think that is?
I think that, for example, if you care about less countries having nuclear weapons, I think the nuclear agreement is one way to go about doing that. Now, I think the ultimate goal would be creating a nuclear weapons-free zone in the Middle East. But the biggest opposition to that right now is Israel. We don't acknowledge that Israel has nuclear weapons. And a big part of that is, according to U.S. law, we can't give military aid to countries that got nuclear weapons outside of the parameters that they were supposed to. That's what Israel did. That's why it's one of the world's biggest open secrets, that Israel, everyone knows they have nuclear weapons, but we don't openly acknowledge it.
Okay, well, do we openly acknowledge every other country that has nuclear weapons?
Depending on, so like, for example, like France and the UK and whatnot, because this is important. I believe it's called the Steinington Amendment. People can fact check me on that, but I believe that's what it's called. And that is the portion of U.S. law that says that we can't give military aid to nuclear powers that got those weapons outside of, I believe it's called like the IAEA, something like that.
Yeah, I didn't know about that. So let's talk about something. Can we talk about free speech? And I think that's the biggest debate with leftism and I shouldn't say people on the right, but most people. I think the biggest issue that we're seeing right now, because like people are tuning in, the thing I said was all of those things that are listed there, majority of those are what most people can agree on, and they're pretty ambiguous language. I think with leftists, where leftists are pushing the most is silence and not letting people say what they want to say. And I think
where have we seen some of the biggest attacks on the First Amendment? We've seen them come with these anti-protesting bills, I think it's fair to call them, that in places like Florida. You know what I mean? Restricting people's rights to protest.
I want to say they're restricting people's rights. They're letting them protest. They're restricting rights of people causing damage.
Well, no, because that's the thing. A lot of these laws, especially the Florida one specifically pushed by DeSantis, this made it where it was much more of an umbrella thing, where people that are peacefully protesting can get wrapped up into it. And that's the thing. I'm a very big First Amendment person. I think the First Amendment is incredibly important. And I think when you create these umbrella laws where people that are exercising their First Amendment right get wrapped up into, yeah, sure, maybe there are people that are doing bad things. But I don't think that if you care about the First Amendment, you can't let people that are just exercising their First Amendment right get wrapped up into that.
Okay, but I think that, if the way that it was written was so you can still peacefully protest all you want. You can do whatever you want. But the second that you start causing damage, then you can start getting in trouble, because you have to make legislation that will prevent the Antifas that are out there from moving in large groups and destroying things, because that's what it was essentially trying to target. Okay, so let's look at other things.
If we want to believe, if we give DeSantis the most charitable reading, sure, that's what he was trying to do. But we can see what U.S. president recently said, that people should potentially be jailed for burning the flag. That was Donald Trump. I mean, that was a giant assault on the principle of freedom of speech to say that people who exercise their First Amendment right by burning the flag should go to jail. I mean, that's absurd, but that was Donald Trump.
Yeah, and that's where he said a lot of crazy things. Now, let's look at other things with outside of politics that are, politicians, outside of legislation. Let's look at just social things. Like look at what's going on at Netflix. Okay, you have all of the people protesting at Netflix because they did not like what Dave Chappelle said. Okay, that's a major thing with leftists right now is they think that what
I
he
would push
said.
back. I mean, which is more relevant? I mean, what the president of the United States said regarding free speech, or what some employees at Netflix said? What's like more relevant? If like we're just talking about
Well,
like what
you're
two people
referring to the
said.
former president, so obviously what he said before that is not as relevant now. Okay, I think.
I mean,
Well,
sure,
let's
sure,
ask
but would you say at the
ourselves this. Okay,
time?
what has
At the
more
time, you would
power
say.
and more? Yeah, at the time. Yeah, at the time. So, but let's ask ourselves this: what has more power? Okay, what has more power in most people's day-to-day lives? What is said there, or what the president will say? I would say that things that have more power are things that you see on social media than what the president will say.
I'm sorry, you think that random people on social media have more influence than the president of the United States?
No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying narratives that are out there on social media. Let's say Twitter. Okay, narratives that are on Twitter carry more weight than what one president will say in an interview.
This is such an amorphous concept, but sure, if we're talking about just the broad narrative on Twitter, I don't even know, like, we're not really defining what we're talking about here. Like, just because some people
I'm
at
saying,
Netflix
okay,
are upset.
yes. So you see the things on Netflix. Okay, you see what's going on about Netflix. Okay, people walking out, people upset about what Dave Chappelle has said. That has a lot of traction. Okay, lots and lots of traction. A lot of things on Twitter are all about it.
Does it
Now we
though?
look at
I don't know
that.
if Twitter is the best indicator of like what the real world, where like public opinion and like what the most important issues are. I don't know about that.
Oh, and I agree with you. I agree. I don't think Twitter is the end all be all of what public opinion is. What I'm saying is, okay, if you have a president that goes on television or is having a press conference and they say something that was kind of stupid, like if you look at Biden's press secretary, she says wild things all the time that are pretty dumb. Okay, even though she's got a large platform, will say things there. She's got a very high position in the government and is the voice of the president. What's written on Twitter, narratives on Twitter, carry more of an influence than what she says, right?
I like I said in the broad, I don't know if we can really make that claim. Let's get to some specifics.
Specifics about what I'm saying is, okay, what is said on Twitter, narratives that are on Twitter, carry more weight than what somebody will say that is a political, in a political position that they will say in passing in an interview or a speech.
I don't know what this means. Like if the president, like I mean generally they're talking about policy. Like so if that is going to translate into actual policy that might actually happen, that seems much more relevant to me than like what's trending on Twitter for the day.
I'm not saying what's trending on Twitter for the day. I'm saying narratives on social media. Okay, narratives on
Let's talk
social
about
media.
let's
Like
talk
you're
about one of
seeing.
the narratives then. Let's talk about a specific narrative then.
Okay, I'm talking about the narrative of the what Dave Chappelle said was violence. I'm talking about that. That's the narrative.
I mean,
Okay.
what percentage of people think that it's violence? Like, I mean, I know there's a lot of people that don't like it. You know, I think that he's done some things that are, I guess,
I couldn't tell you what percentage it is because it doesn't
I
matter.
think it's a very
It doesn't
small.
matter.
I think it's a very small percentage. I think the percentage absolutely matters.
But there's no way to you can't argue like you can't quantify that percentage. Like I can't say, oh, I think it's 40%. It genuinely doesn't matter.
I mean, but if we're saying it like it could potentially be like 3% of Americans, then that's probably high for the number of people that think it's violence. And we're saying this is the most pressing issue facing left and right. I would disagree with that.
I'm saying that freedom of speech and what people want to say is violence and what they don't say is violence is a major difference between leftists and people who are center or leaning right. Because if you look at your points there, those are all just ambiguous hot button phrases. Okay, where if you say Trump is a disaster, what does that mean? That's not a debate between left and right. That's just a statement. So if what I'm saying
it's a conversation starter that I hopefully turns into policy.
Oh, it is a great conversation starter. It's a great way to bait people in. It's fantastic, and that's why I'm here. Like it's a totally great way to do it. I'm saying what leftists, what the biggest thing that I see that is what they debate against other people is freedom of speech, what you're allowed to say, what you're not allowed to say.
Now,
and what you
are
should
you
say and what you shouldn't say. I
are
think
you
that
talking
is
about like what's allowed to be said in terms of like the court of public opinion, or are you saying like government restrictions on speech? I mean, because there's
both.
always been social taboos in terms of like what people can get away with saying. Like that's something that's existed throughout time. That's not a new
Yeah.
phenomenon. But like the idea of like I don't know of any, maybe you can correct me, of any big pushes to have the government restrict speech in any meaningful way, other than like I said, the ones that if we're talking about like
If
speech
you
more
look
broad.
at Canada in 2016 when they were pushing to
No,
have
not
people
not Canada.
jailed if
No,
you miss
a lot of
if
a lot of
if you mispronoun if you use somebody's wrong pronoun, having you jail, that's a huge push. That's a huge push
I've
for the government to
that's
silence.
the big thing that Jordan Peterson was about. That to my understanding, that's a very much a mischaracterization of it. But I don't agree with a lot of the speech the regulations in like European nations and Canada. I'm a big free speech person, but so like I'm talking about in the U.S.
In the US, I think you're seeing a lot of issues with free speech amongst the universities. I think you're seeing so many people that are silenced at the universities and people that, are people that are silenced or getting moved out of places because they can't say what they want to say. All right. I think, there's so many videos out there that are people in universities trying to say something that challenges the, whatever narrative a professor wants to say, and they get in huge trouble for it. Let's look at, I believe her name is Yeonmi Park. She was the North Korean defector. Okay. She went to Colombia, I believe. She said that there's more sensation that people are starting to censor what you say more at the universities than we're seeing the trend of people are censoring in universities, and she's saying it's trending toward how things were like in North Korea. She
That's
lived in
silly.
North Korea.
That's a very silly thing to say. I mean, you're aware of like how restrictive it is in North Korea.
Oh, I
It's
am,
nothing.
I am, I am. But
It's
what
nothing
she's
even
saying
remotely
is
close.
it's
The United
trending.
States, no, the United States has some of the most like open speech laws in the entire developed world. Like we genuinely do. Like when you look at like like specifics of it, the United States is actually really good when it comes to this issue. The idea that we're anywhere even remotely close to North Korea, I think, is just sensationalist. Trying to get like I mean that's it's not even kind of true.
Oh, I know, and we're not even close there. We're not even closer. But what she was saying is she felt the same feeling of having to watch exactly what you say in the universities, because if you say something that's wrong, it can have major implications. Where I don't know if you went to college or not, but I know I went to college and finished my master's degree. There's some things that you can't say in universities and even challenge a narrative, and there's major pushback for it.
I mean, I don't think that getting pushback on your ideas. I mean, if you say something that's unpopular, yes, that's always throughout this. Like to go back to it, throughout history, that's always going to be a thing. If you say something that's unpopular, there's going to be people that don't like that. I don't know exactly how you think that we should like regulate that or something. I don't really think that we should. I think that that's part of it. I have a lot of unpopular positions. I don't think that like people should be forced to agree with me. That's why I think that stuff like this is important, like conversations. I don't think that just because you receive pushback on an idea doesn't mean you're being censored. That just means people disagree.
Yeah, absolutely. But you can get kicked out of universities for saying things such as, "I think men are men and women are women." You're seeing people that
someone's been kicked out
if
of
you look
like a
at
student?
if you look at the gal who wrote Harry Potter, I forget
J.K. Rowling,
what.
one of the most successful authors of all time.
Yeah, J.K. Rowling. Yes. If you look at what she said about saying men are men and women are women, she received massive pushback. Is that and people were taking her books off the shelves. Okay, if you look at
I mean, do you think that people are under obligation of like selling books of people that like they don't like? Do you think that people should be like? I mean, what do you think when you say she received pushback? I mean, yeah, people didn't like what she said. I didn't like a lot of what she said. I mean,
yeah, and people were calling for her books to be taken off shelves, and they were getting taken off the shelves. If you look at,
I'm pretty sure like
her
99% of books.
if you look at,
just to be clear, every bookstore I go into, you can see Harry Potter literally everywhere.
okay, so that's very anecdotal, but there were
Do you
stores that
wait?
were
Do you
taking
disagree?
books
I
off
mean,
the shelf. If you look at the book,
maybe it is
Irreversible
anecdotal,
Damage,
but I mean, Harry Potter is still like very popular, isn't it?
yeah, it is. It absolutely. But she was facing massive pushback for it. Okay, if we look at the book called Irreversible Damage, which was written by Abigail Schreiner, I think it was Schreiner. She talked about how looking at transgender rates among young kids, and when they transition at a young age, as they get older, they tend to have negative repercussions. Okay, she looked through all the stats.
According
Target
to this day, I mean, I frankly that's
just hey,
different than what I've seen before.
Can I explain?
I mean,
okay, so we're talking about free speech. her book kept getting removed off of shelves because people thought what she was saying was not that they didn't agree with it, even though she cited everything and went through it and cited all of it and gave her facts. Never said anything about being anti-trans. You know, she's not anti-trans.
I mean, but
And
this has always been a thing. I mean, Noam Chomsky, for example, when him and Ed Herman wrote Manufacturing Consent, no major publisher wanted them after they wrote that book. I mean, it was very widely condemned by
but
elements
this
of the
isn't a
corporate
publisher
media.
thing. This isn't a publisher. Target's not a publisher. They're a book
No, no, no.
distributor.
Well, we're talking about platform. We're talking about getting platformed by large private entities. This has always been a thing. When people say things that largely go against what corporations think is profitable, they don't platform that kind of thing. But this has always been a thing. It's not a new thing.
But books that are extremely, extremely monetarily successful do get deplatformed all the time. You mentioned Jordan Peterson earlier. There's so many places that try to get rid of his book that are on the shelves. His book is a New York Times bestseller. His book is extremely.
There seems to be a contradiction. There seems to be a contradiction here. All right, we got a bestseller, and we also have he's being widely censored. I feel like there's a contradiction there.
No, what I'm saying is a lot of times these books that start becoming bestsellers and they start making a lot of money and start getting traction, that a lot of these companies, when they receive a little bit of pushback for it, they remove it off the shelves because it's better for their PR to have them off the shelves.
Okay, what do you think we should do?
What do you think we should do? I think we should have freedom of speech. I think that.
Wait. Just to be clear. How are you defining free speech? Are you defining it as government restricting speech, or are you defining it as I don't want to be criticized for things that I say that might be unpopular?
Okay, you're right. There's two ways we can look at it. I think that the government shouldn't restrict your free speech. Okay, if what you say doesn't incite hate on people, then you should be able to say it. But then that comes the debate of are words violent, and what exactly is that line? So we can put that for another conversation. Now, what we're looking at is, okay, from a social standpoint, and a lot of leftists have issues with books that are written that go against what they believe in. Okay, and that's
I don't know if this is specific to leftists. I don't know. We're talking about this as like a leftist thing. I mean, historically, when we talk about like books getting banned from schools, it's generally like conservative. I mean, I remember people like conservative Christian groups wanting to get Harry Potter banned from schools because they thought it would enhance like a demon worshiping or whatever. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
this is like, when we talk, wait. When we talk about things getting like banned, I mean, this is like always been a thing, and I would very much push back that this is like I mean, the Beatles got canceled when they said stuff. Like, I mean, has always been a thing.
Yeah, and
it's definitely not been.
We're seeing a political and cultural shift where right now, leftists, or I should back. So Democrats used to be as free speech as as open as liberal as possible. Okay, now you're seeing a lot of not even conservatives. You're seeing libertarians, neoliberalists that believe on much more free speech, and the leftists tend to be the ones that are now silencing people. For example, I brought up the Netflix thing earlier. Most of the people would be that are protesting against what Dave Chappelle said would be classified as leftists. Would you agree?
Most of the people that are protesting Dave Chappelle would be classified as leftists. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that walked out of the Netflix thing would be would probably be grouped in the category of leftist ideology. Would you agree?
I don't know how they would identify. Like, are they like socialists?
But
you
identify as a leftist. So if you speak on behalf of leftists, that's what usually leftists will do. Correct?
I don't know if I would agree with that. I don't know. I think that this is I mean, you can call it leftism. I don't know what tenet of leftism do you think applies to this?
Applies to what? Netflix? I don't understand your question.
I don't know. I mean, you were saying like, are these people are leftists walking out of Netflix?
But in your heading there, it says I am a leftist.
Sure, but I mean, like, I don't think that Dave Chappelle should be taken down from Netflix. So I don't.
Okay, I would say a lot of the people that would be categorized as leftists are the ones that are protesting, saying that his special should be taken down. And it's been such a big deal that the Netflix CEO has made 2 statements on the matter now. Okay, so that free speech is obviously something that's important. And that's
when we say free speech, I feel like it's super important still. We're still talking about like your right to a private entity platforming you.
Yeah, then we can have these conversations about what are these platforms' role. Yeah, these platforms, sure, they can. You can say whatever you want. The platforms are private companies. Okay, they're private companies, but
I think the private companies, like social media, for example, I think they should either be broken up, nationalized, or regulated like utilities. Those would be one of those 3 would be my preferred thing. But I mean, I have this across the board. I think that corporations have too much power. This isn't like a unique thing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that's the debate for big tech. But hey, man, that's a great conversation. I gotta get going, but I appreciate it, dude.
All right, you have a good one, man.
Yeah, peace out.